Hi, I'm Shuyuan from The Ohio State University working with Professor John Upfer. I'm going to talk about how analogy plays a role in fraction learning. The central question in developmental psychology, framed as Plato's question by Noam Chomsky, is how do we learn so much from so little? How do we learn languages from a finite number of utterances? How do we learn taxonomy of living things from only limited examples? And how do we learn the meaning of an infinite number of numbers from only limited experiences with finite numbers? A theory of how we do this is provided by Professor Dedrick Gettner, the structure mapping theory, where we can go from a limited set of experiences and make comparisons based on the elements of the structure between the experiences, and then abstract the common underlying relational structure and map the structure of the limited experiences to novel situations. This analogy making process allows us to extrapolate what is learned far beyond the training range. According to the structure mapping theory, alignment between the target and the base domains can highlight the surface similarity and the alignable differences, and therefore facilitating the abstraction of common relational structure and analogical transfer. Indeed, previous research has shown that alignment between small and familiar integers and large unfamiliar integers on number lines fosters a more linear and precise representation of large numbers. By making the analogy that 15 is to 100 as 1,500 is to 10,000, second graders gain a better understanding of the decimal system, and thus having a more accurate estimation of these large numbers that they rarely encountered. So we wonder whether or not the same will be true for learning fractions. Fractions are pretty important because they are the gateway to algebra, which is the gateway to college acceptance and therefore the gateway to college career options and college earnings, and in short, the middle class. So these numbers are extremely important. However, fractions are also very difficult to learn. And one confusion about fractions is this cross-mapping between integers and fractions. So when you look at the values of the numerators, the value of fractions increase linearly as the value of numerators, just like integers do. But when you look at the values of the denominators, the value of fractions decrease as a power function. This is not only confusing for children, but causes adults problems as well. This is unfortunate because children are superior at estimating small integers. So how to build fraction knowledge on children's solid understanding of integers? We think that structure mapping theory provides a way of how we make that leap and help children draw correct analogy between relations of integers and fractions. So for the current study, we aimed to further examine whether correct analogy between integers and fractions on number line can highlight the structure similarity between integers and fractions, and thus will make their understandings more similar. And second, we aimed to test whether or not alignment between integers and fractions can improve understanding of fractional magnitudes. And finally, if alignment works, how durable is the training? Will this better understanding of fractions persist when analogical bases of integers are not readily available? To achieve these aims, we are going to test an educational intervention that provides integer fraction alignment on number lines. So this is the overall study design. 99 third to 5th graders were randomly assigned to one of the two groups, alignment and no alignment. To measure the effect of training, both groups of children received the same number line estimation assessment before and after training. Training takes about 20 minutes, and the whole session with pre and post took about 45 minutes. Also, this was an online and unmoderated research, meaning that children self-paced through the study online without any interactions with researchers. This is helpful in reducing the interference of researchers and scaling up the intervention to a larger population. But it remains a question whether these 20 minutes online teaching would even be effective. Also, we tested a group of 46 college students. They completed the same number line estimation tasks as a measure of the accuracy level we ultimately would like children to achieve. On pre-test and post-test, children completed two types of number line estimation tasks, number to position and position to number. For the number to position task, participants needed to estimate the position of a fraction or an integer on the number line, like this. And for the position to number task, participants needed to produce a number corresponding to a mark on the line. So these are tasks during pre and post. Then what about training? During training, children in the alignment group were given 4 couples of number lines, vertically aligned. So for each magnitude, they needed to solve 2 questions on one screen like this, and the top question is visible when they solve the bottom question. Thus, they have a chance to compare between these questions. And our pilot study has shown that this integer position to number task is the easiest out of the 4 tasks. So that was the start of our training sequence for each magnitude. And then we progressively increased the difficulty and moved from integers to fraction questions so that children have a chance to compare the integer and fraction problems and compare, see, the location of 3's on a 0 to 1 number line and 3 on a 0 to 8 number line, and make proportional analogies that 3 is to 8 as 3/8 is to 1 based on their comparisons. Okay, and in the no-alignment group, on the other hand, children completed 8 lonely number lines. Participants received the exact same items as the alignment group, but sequentially, one at a time, in a randomized order. Thereby, they don't have this ability to compare these problems. Also, in neither group were children instructed to compare the problems, nor did they receive feedback on their answers. So the study was designed to test whether or not spatial alignment alone can facilitate spontaneous comparison and analogy generation. So what did we find? Does similarity increase? So to answer our first question, we calculated integer fraction correlation, which is the correlation between estimates of these proportionally equivalent integers and fractions. So for example, if a child estimated about 0.3 for the position of 3 on a 0 to 8 number line, like this, and estimated 0.6 for 3/8 on a 0 to 1 number line, we will plot their estimate like this. Likewise, we can match and plot for all the magnitude we tested. And then calculated a correlation between these integer estimates and fraction estimates for each participant. A more similar representation between integers and fractions would mean a stronger correlation between their integer and fraction estimates. So here, I'm presenting the correlation between integers and fractions for training and post-test, and for the alignment group and the no alignment group of children. Here I'm presented the correlation for the no alignment group. These scores are adjusted for pretest integer fraction correlation and age. These error bars indicate 95% of the confidence interval. We also calculated adults' integer fraction correlation score, and the standard error of adults is depicted by this gray area. This area is very narrow because adults are pretty consistent. And what we found is that adults have a stronger correlation than children in the no alignment group on both training and post-test. So now the question is whether or not children in the alignment group have these stronger integer fraction correlation than children in the no alignment group? And is their correlation as strong as college students? And if not, how far away children still needed to learn? What we found is that during training, children in the alignment group have stronger correlations than the no alignment group, and their correlation were as strong as those of adults. And at post-test, although alignment group were not significantly stronger than the no alignment group, their correlations were still as strong as adults, whereas the correlation for the no alignment group were significantly lower than adults. So this suggests that alignment moved children up in the direction to adults. They got all their way up during training and maintained their performance during post-test. This confirms that alignment makes these understandings of integer and fractions more similar. However, a higher similarity does not necessarily mean a higher accuracy. So, and our next question is to test whether or not alignment also improved children's understanding of fractions. So here I'm presenting children's performance during the training session on the fraction number to position task and fraction position to number task. Children's performance were measured by the percent absolute error. This is the absolute difference between children's estimates and the true magnitude divided by the numerical range. So a lower bar means more accurate estimates. And because the residuals of the mixed linear model is not normally distributed, we used this log transformed version of PAE. And again, we adjusted the score and controlled for the pretest performance and age. And here is the PAE for children in the no alignment group. We can see that there is a wider distribution of errors for these position to number tasks compared to the number to position task. Because for these position to number tasks, you can generate any number. So it's possible to have these numbers outside of the upper bound and cause larger range of errors. And here is the adult's performance on the number to position task and position to number task as a reference line. We can see that adults are much more accurate with fraction estimates than children in the no alignment group on both tasks. Now again, the question is, are children in the alignment group doing better than the no alignment group? And can they be almost as well as adults? And what we found is that yes, children in the alignment group were significantly more accurate with their fraction estimates than the no alignment group on both tasks. And besides, alignment group were as accurate as adults on the number to position tasks, and even significantly more accurate than adults on the position to number tasks when these analogical sources of integers are available. So these are some evidence that children can make proportional analogies spontaneously when they see these analogical sources and targets well aligned, even when they are not explicitly told to make any comparisons. Our findings suggest that alignment to integers improves accuracy with fraction estimates, and comparing integers and fractions on number line brought 3rd to 5th graders to adults level, or even better than adults level in 20 minutes. And our next question is, can training effect persist at post-test when these analogical sources of integers are not readily available? So we did the parallel analysis as we did for the training phase. So here are the results for the post-test when children were only presented fraction number lines. Here I show the percent absolute error for children in the no alignment group again. And we found that adults were significantly more accurate than children in the no alignment group on both tasks during post-test. Then how about the alignment group? So what we found is that on the number to position task, children in the alignment group were more accurate with fraction estimates than children in the no alignment group, and also they were as accurate as adults. And on the position to number task, alignment group did not significantly outperform the no alignment group, presumably due to a larger variance on this task, but the estimation accuracy for children in the alignment group was not significantly different from adults level, whereas the no alignment group was significantly less accurate than adults. These findings suggest that alignments leads to more accurate estimates with fractions at post-test. After about 20 minutes of training, the alignment group are more like adults in terms of fraction estimates than the no alignment group. So to conclude, our results suggest that spatial alignment between integers and fractions facilitates spontaneous analogy, which leads to a more similar and coherent representation between integers and fractions, and a better understanding of fractional magnitudes. This understanding persists when analogical sources desist. And this understanding can be as good as adults after about 20 minutes training in an unmoderated, independent online session. Our next step is to explore whether learning can maintain after a delay. We also wanted to examine whether learning transferred to novel tasks beyond the number line estimation task, such as comparison, categorization, ordering, and arithmetic. We have found that in the in-person setting, our training maintained with a delay and transferred to novel tasks, but it remains to be tested whether or not the online setting will work the same. These findings have important educational implications as well. Rather than integer being an obstacle to fraction learning, pre-existing integer knowledge can be a stepping stone when instruction draws on the power of good analogies. Finally, a huge thank you to Professor Marjorie Rose and Panda for hosting our online study in the middle of the pandemic, to my advisor and lab mates at the Developmental Cognitive Science Lab, to our collaborators at Cognitive Developmental Lab at Kent State University, to Children Helping Science for posting our study, to IEICE for funding us, and to schools and families participated in our studies. Thank you all so much for listening.